It started small. Just a faint knock at the door at 3 in the morning. The woman thought it was kids messing around. Maybe neighbors, maybe just the pipes. But then it happened again the next night, and again. Always at exactly 3 a.m., she finally decided to check. With her heart pounding, she pressed her eye to the peephole. What she saw wasn't possible. On the other side of the door was herself. Same face, same hair, same pajamas. Only the figure outside was smiling, wide and unnatural, as if it had been waiting. Frozen in terror, she stepped back. The knocking grew louder. She didn't open it. The next morning, she found long, deep scratch marks across her door. The marks weren't on the outside. They were carved into the wood from the inside. A young couple bought a farmhouse out in the country, excited to start fresh. The house was old, the walls cracked, the floors groaning, but at night, they began to hear crying. Faint, muffled, like a baby somewhere in the walls. At first, they thought it was an animal, but the sound grew clearer, human. Finally, the husband broke through one of the old walls. Behind the plaster was a small bricked-up chamber. Inside was a crib, rotting with age. In the crib lay a blanket, decayed, but still holding the faint imprint of something that once slept there. On the floor was a diary. The last entry said only, "Do not let him out." A taxi driver was finishing his night shift on a rainy evening when he saw a young woman in white waving him down. She was soaked, shivering, and silent as she climbed into the back seat. She gave him an address. It wasn't far. He drove through the downpour, checking on her in the mirror. She never spoke, only stared out the window. When he reached the house, he turned around to let her know, but the back seat was empty. Confused, he knocked on the door. An older woman answered. When he described his passenger, the woman's face went pale. She whispered,
"My daughter died in a car accident 10 years ago, on that same road."
A nurse working the night shift heard something strange. Faint crying echoing from a part of the hospital that had been sealed off years ago. Curiosity pushed her to follow the sound. She pried open a rusted door and descended into the basement. The air was thick with mildew. The dim light revealed rows of rusted hospital beds. Each one had restraints. She stopped when she saw one of the beds still occupied. A patient lay strapped down, skin pale as wax, their face wrong, sunken, and where the eyes should have been, only black empty sockets, and yet the chest rose and fell. They were still breathing. At a flea market, a little girl begged her parents for a porcelain doll. Its face was cracked, one glass eye missing. The vendor practically gave it away that night. The parents placed the doll on a shelf in her bedroom, but by morning, the doll was in the living room. They scolded their daughter for moving it. She swore she hadn't. The next night, the doll was in the kitchen, then the bathroom, always moving closer to their daughter's bed. One night, the parents peeked in. They froze. The doll was sitting on the pillow beside their daughter, its cracked mouth pressed against her ear, whispering. A group of friends went camping deep in the woods. As the fire burned low, they heard laughter. Children's laughter. It echoed all around them, but the forest was empty. They called out, thinking maybe other campers were nearby. No answer, just more laughter. Closer this time. In the morning, they checked their recorder. At first, it was only static. Then the laughter began, and then, clear as day, a whisper right into the microphone.
"We found you."
A man was brushing his teeth before bed. He bent down to rinse his mouth, then looked up again. His reflection didn't move. It stared at him. It smiled, though he wasn't smiling. Slowly, the reflection raised its hand, though his own hand stayed perfectly still. Then the bathroom light flickered, and for a split second, the reflection wasn't him at all. A mother's phone rang after midnight. The caller ID showed her daughter's number. She answered, worried. On the other end was sobbing. her daughter's voice crying, begging for help. The mother rushed to her daughter's room. She was sound asleep, safe in her bed, shaking. The mother checked her call history. The call had come not from her daughter's number, but from her own phone. When his uncle passed away, a man inherited an old house. Exploring it, he found a locked trunk in the attic. He forced it open. Inside were jars filled with preserved eyes, small teeth in little cloth bags, and Polaroids. At first, the photos showed strangers sleeping in their beds. But as he flipped through, the last photo showed him sleeping in his current home. A man boarded the subway late at night. The car was nearly empty. Just a few silent passengers. At first, he didn't notice. But then he realized none of them had faces. Smooth, blank skin where their eyes and mouths should be. When the train reached the next stop, every faceless passenger turned to him in unison. And as the doors shut, they all raised their hands and pointed directly at him. The train kept moving. He never got off,